I'm getting started back on the Bel Air. I'm going to paint the back, that frame cross member and some of that back area, and I'm just going to use Rust-Oleum. I was going to use, thought I had a quart of this in satin black, but this is what I found when I was looking for it, so maybe that's what I had instead. So I ran to the hardware and got a little can of satin black, and I dug out one of my cheap throwaway brushes just to slap the paint on. That's going to be that back part behind where the valance goes on the Bel Air here. You've seen in the last video where I straightened that. And then I got this one from from Dave, and I think it has one little ding right there, and I think one little peck with the body hammer, and that will be out. But I'm going to bead blast this. I ordered a reproduction, and I think the reproductions have the holes, drilled for the backup lights. And if it does, I'm going to make a template off that for this one, so they're both even on the back of the car. One's not higher than the other. And if it doesn't come with holes for the backup light, I'll make a template off one of the existing panels and have to drill them both. But I'm going to bead blast this and maybe prime it with metal etching primer. I don't like painting over this, this original type of stuff they put on these things. It just, I don't know, it's hard to sand, it's hard to make a nice surface with that, so I'm going to remove that stuff off of it. Yeah, a little ding showed up more on this back side than it did the front side, and I just took my this end of the little body hammer and a few little taps, and it's 100% out. You can't even tell where it was on this side. Good enough. Oh, and this has been drying a couple of days now. It's got a little dust on it now from sitting here in the garage, hanging in the garage, but it's on dry paint, so it won't hurt anything. I might give that a quickie buff before I put it back on the car, just a very quickie one, because it looks really good. I think I stated in the videos, along with replacing these grill screen moldings and painting anything under them I need to paint, the rocker panel moldings. This one, you can see how it's unsnapped there. There's a gap there. And I can snap it back in, but it pops back out. And they're metal clips that go through holes in the rocker panel, and over the years I've taken them off and put pop riveted plastic clips to hold them in place, and they just start getting worse as time's going on. And I'm thinking where those metal clips go through, it's the rocker panel's rusted out. I think that's the first place it usually goes on cars, is where those where molding clips go through. That's where they usually rot first. The underside and the inner side and top, all the rocker panels are solid, but I have a feeling when I take this trim off, I might be welding a new skin on the rocker panel and then re-drilling the holes for the molding clips so that they stay on. This side's been popping off the front here, and the other side's been popping off the rear, and I don't want them come off the car, so that's one thing I want to address, is the rocker panel moldings coming loose. And then of course the seat, that'll probably be last. That'll probably be, time I get to that, it'll probably be March. So I'm just going to putz away at it, because I'm also going to work on that little tricycle project too, and some other things I have going on. All right, let me get that valance. I might as well, while I'm waiting for the NOS one to come, I can get some things done. So I'm going to get this down to bare metal and prime it with the metal etching primer, and then that'll be done. Oh, and of course do that little bit of painting, and I'm not going to video that. We all know how to brush paint. I'll video when it's done, but I'm not going to video doing it. Yeah, I've never put a can of paint that small in the shaker since I've owned it. Anyway, we'll get that shook up, and then we'll start our little bit of brush painting project. I just painted all this with that brush Rust-Oleum. Yeah, I can't. I got a big mess of wet paint here, so like crawling around under the car might not happen with the camera, but I'm going to try and show you. I tried to get everything all up in there and there. And I even painted the, I can't see what the camera's shining back here, but I painted that. And you can see the floor pan still has the undercoating on it. That's why that looks the way it does. And I've painted over this in the past with Rust-Oleum, but you can see where a big chunk of the undercoating there and there is peeled off over the years. And I've just painted it. That's why I paint the underneath with Rust-Oleum. If you get a chunk undercoating that peels, or you need to, you know, go back over some, it's just super easy. That's still wet, so that's why it's glossy. It is a satin. You can see it's starting to tack up right in there. But that is satin black, and that's often what I use on my undercarriages. Satin black Rust-Oleum. I've tried everything under the sun, all these expensive paints, Pour 15, you name it. And I've never found anything that works better than good old Rust-Oleum. Now that I painted that underneath part, I think I'm going to bead blast this. My air compressor isn't all the way pumped up, so it might come on right away, but I'm going to throw this in the bead blast cabinet. Nice light. See in my past videos, I put a new light and switch on here. Switch also works a vacuum. And they got more glass beads in there. Alright, let me get this thing bead blasted. I'll just get a little bit of video for you here. So you can see that won't take long to clean it up. There's some numbers on there. I don't know if you can see that or not. A 4 and a 0. Does that show up? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, there I'm going to go ahead and see the air compressor's running. You know, if it's all pumped up, sometimes it takes 10 minutes, you know, a few minutes before the compressor comes on. It'll cycle using this. I'll run my pressure at 60 psi when I'm pulling the trigger. I'm going to give this a quick hand sand, maybe with some 150 or something. And then I'm going to prime it with the metal etching primer, and it's ready for paint. This side I didn't, I just kind of held the blast nozzle as far as I could away and just really quickly went over it. I did go through it in a few places I was trying not to, but the back side, you know, it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. But the front side, I like to get that stuff off to finish it. But anyway, I'm going to sand this and then wipe it down and prime it. And if I had the holes in it for the backup lights, it would be paint ready. But I want to get the panel that the reproduction I ordered, if it has the holes, I want to put these in the same location so that I don't end up with backup lights that aren't even on the back of the car. So that's kind of why I'm not, otherwise this could go to paint. I could paint this tomorrow. I sanded it out with 320, and I did that after I bead blasted. I just used some here. Because then you can see every little imperfection in the panel. So there's where that dent was, right there. And I can't feel it, but I can certainly see it. And it looks like there's another one above it there, as you can see. So I'm going to work on them. You can see all the dye marks in it. The dye marks I'm not going to repair. The bumper covers all that, and the bumper covers all that. And that's just the way they were. And you can see where there was a little tiny bit of, I don't know if that shows up in the video there or not, there was a little tiny bit of surface rust on it. So I'm going to, after I metal etch prime it, I'm going to prime it with filler primer, that gray primer, and sand that out with some 400. And then that should hide all those little surface rust imperfections and these dye marks on this curve here. I mean, you know, they didn't build show cars. They built cars to be driven, and these are down under the bumper really where you don't see, you know, the bumpers. Comes to about there. It's hard to hold this and hold my camera and point at the same time. But anyway, yeah, that's going to look just Jim Dandy. I think it'll look great. Quite pleased with it. Thank you, Dave. Sure appreciate this. This is a big cost savings. These things are not cheap. And I got the panel primer ready, so we'll get the primer shook up and give it a coat. There we go, coat of primer on it. You can barely see those little nicks and the like surface rust nicks, but it looks good. I'm happy with it. You know, if you don't bead blast them or something and you want to see your nicks, just take a I don't like to use just any spray bomb of color or black or anything, because if you don't get it all off, it could react with the products you're going to put on after the fact. So I always use the same, like if this is my base prime on bare metal, I'll just just barely mist it and then sand it, and it'll give you that same effect. So if you don't, you know, sandblast it, just give it a light coat of primer, you know, lighter than that, and then just give it a sand and you'll see all your imperfections. We'll get the sandable primer shook up now and give it a coat of that. There we go, it is sandable primed and obviously still wet. I got my valance panel today. This is a reproduction, and it does have the holes for the backup light, and it's not got any paint on it, but it's not the quality of the NOS. You can see the holes. I don't know if you can see that or not, but let me get it on some contrast here. The holes are not straight across. This one's significant. It's over a whole width higher, and I don't want the backup lights on here crooked, so I'm going to have to pull the panels on the car. And I'll probably have to re-drill one of these two holes depending on where the screw is to where it fits. They may be big enough to where, you know, I can wiggle it around some, but yeah, that's just typical reproduction garbage, and you can see how that's not really bent properly like it should be. That's the correct way it should look, and that's kind of the way it is. And they put a little tack weld right there, so that will need some attention. Probably this will need a little attention cleaning it up. I'll take my hammer and dolly to that, and you can see it's kind of beat there too. See how that looks. Typical of reproduction. It's just, I find reproduction quality very poor at best. Look at the dye marks on this. They're all the way down into the backup light there, so I'm going to have to do something about that, because that will be visible. That's far enough down to where the bumper won't hide it. This one, the little bit of dye marks it had, the filler primer took care of them. And so anyway, yeah, so I'll get to work pulling those valances off so I can get the holes all correct on them. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the backup lights in both of them and put them on the car just as they are. That one primed, this one bare, and just get everything looking good. And then I'll take them back off, take the lights off, clean them and paint them. And this one, like I say, I'm going to have to do something about that. That's just, I'll see if I can sand that out with my DA with the orbital sander, get some of those dye marks out, and I'll take my body hammer and work that just enough to kind of, I mean, you don't really see this. This is the bumper ends here, but you do kind of a little bit see it, but you have to get down on your hands and knees and look to see that. So yeah, not so thrilled. This, a lot of people don't realize too that this was originally notched out so the tailpipe would come out here. A lot of them, the tailpipe just comes out like they do on my Bel Air now, but originally they outletted here and they were kind of cut off. So it kind of hid the pipes from view, but they don't make them like that anymore. Before I get to work on these, taking them off, I was looking at this one, and anyway, that's where you would see the side. You can see the cracked paint, and that's light states top on it. I don't know if that shows up or not. Right here it states top, and I guess that shows up without the light, but this screw is lower than that screw, so I'm suspecting that that panel is drilled right, and they probably offset the screws so this only goes on one way, because these screws for the bezel are actually more towards the top than the bottom. So this will only go on one way. That means the lens will only go on one way because it has layers on the lens, and then that backup thing will only go in one way. So I guess that is the way it's supposed to be. Let me look at the other one while I'm down here. You can see how the tailpipe sticks down here. So originally that pipe would have been up a little bit more, and then it would come out and be kind of, so the outlet would be right there, and then they would saw them off, you know, so they'd be pointing more kind of a downward angle. That's the way that was all dirty, the way the original pipes would have went. So anyway, let me look at the other one and see the way the screws are on it. Climb over here. Yeah, they're offset there too, same exact way. All right, well, I can make a pattern off that one, then see which way I need to put it on this one so the holes are drilled correctly. You can see this tailpipe on the dual exhaust. Muffler shop just put this pipe in the way they did, but on the cars with dual exhaust, the pipe, see how that one's on the outboard side of the frame rail? That's correct. This one should have been on the inboard side of the frame rail, and then it comes up, and then it's supposed to point down here and be cut off there with the pipe kind of coming out right there. But the muffler shop that did this back in, who knows when, probably the 80s, it's just the way the guy did it that did the exhaust on the car. I don't think he, you know, used the factory bends or anything. He just bent pipes up that fit where he put them and called it good. And if I ever redo the exhaust on this car, if it ever rots out, I'll put a stainless system on it, and I'll put the resonators and everything on in stainless, so I'm not replacing them every 2 years. And you can see where this is because the tab that I showed you on the other one's broken off. It screws, this is the, turn a light on here, I got one in my hand. So you can see where that bent tab screws into that. Actually, I think that tab goes over that, and that clip should be on the valance panel. And then the screw goes up through that opening, which that's through, but there's no tab on here. You can see the fiberglass cloth pattern. Yeah, I made these panels out of fiberglass the best I could, and they've held up pretty good. They've been on there for, you can see the cracked paint on this one too, probably. They've been on there like that since, probably since I purchased the car. I purchased it in 78. It might have been 79 when I beat out these panels and made new ones. So it's been a long time, and I painted them with lacquer. And that's why the paint's all cracked, and that's why I'm redoing them. And that's why, because I made these ones out of fiberglass, why I'm choosing to just replace them with the reproduction or the new old stock one Dave gave me. There's the back of the light. I don't know if that shows up or not. I can't see what the viewer screen is looking at. But once we get that out, we'll paint all that up in there too with some of that Rust-Oleum. That's probably never been done since I've owned the car. That's probably original to the finish of the car right there. Yeah, I don't know why I would have ever done them, because back in when I was 79, I didn't think I'd have the car 45 years, so I just kind of made these and stuffed them on, and that was that. So there we go. Just thought I'd show a little bit of that. That tab I'm talking about that bends up and screws into the body there. And right now you saw where that screw was with the little rubber washer right here. And I'm going to clean this all up really nice right in here. Try and clean this up the best I can from marks and stuff. It looks like a drill kind of walked around there or something in here. Well, I don't know. It could have just been the way they were stacked in storage in the, you know, the warehouse. But I'm going to clean it up, pretty it up a little bit before I prime it. First thing I'm doing is going around with some 80 grit. These edges all the way around are really sharp from when it was stamped out on the cutting die. So I'm just going around with some 80 grit and getting them so they're not sharp. And that way you don't want sharp edges, because the paint won't, you won't have any paint on those sharp edges, and that's where rust will start. So you definitely want to make sure you have no sharp edges right from the get-go. So I like to go around and clean all the edges up on any paint replacement panel I'm doing, so I don't end up with sharp edges or anything that paint, might be so thin, like if it's a knife edge and you paint it, it's still going to eventually rust because the paint won't be very thick on the sharp edge. So I like to blunt them down, and then that just makes them so that they don't rust as quick. And you can see there it needs a little, maybe a file there. But I'm just going to go around and work all the edges first. I'm just doing a little comparison to see which one I'll need to work. I think I really need to put these on the car. See how that is? And that looks correct. And this is the NOS panel, and this is the reproduction, and see how that's straight. That might need to be bent like that. So I'm going to pull the existing ones off the car and fit these to the car, both of them. Put the backup lights holes in, put the backup lights on, attach them to the car and see how they look, and then go from there. You can see that one's got some dents in it right there from where I sanded that show. But that's above the bumper. That whole area where my thumb is the bumper bracket. So the bumper actually comes down. So I'm not going to worry about that. I don't think that's worth the effort to fill it. And if I hammer it out, it's just going to make other things worse, because it's going to move the metal around. And these ends are both kind of rough looking. I might put a little filler on them. But these ends here aren't much different. This end's pretty good compared to, look at the difference in these. This end, look at that one compared to that one. And that's that is up by the bumper. This meets up to the quarter panel, and I don't want that rough, so I might see that one's totally acceptable. That one's pretty good shape, but this one, yeah, might have to work a little bit. Needs a little grinding out there to level that in. So that's going to take a little bit of work before it's ready to go on the car. They're super easy to remove. 2 screws there, 1 screw there, and the bolt that you saw there. And there you can kind of see the backside. Yeah, those holes are definitely offset in there. See my homemade fiberglass valance panel that I made back in probably about 79, I'm guessing, maybe 80, because these were just destroyed on the car, and I wanted backup lights, and the only way I could get them was to rebuild the valance panels. And I put new old stock backup lights on back then. I purchased at a swap meet. I don't know, the guy almost gave them. I mean, you could get this stuff for nothing back in the day. And that all looks pretty good. We'll give a little brush paint up there like we did here, so this all looks nice. Get it all painted up in here and here, and get all these brackets and this, and just kind of help protect it. Maybe scrape some of that loose undercoating there and paint that up a bit. So anyway, yeah, I just needed this is all held on. I got to run to the hardware. I'm going to take one of these with me, see if I can get a bunch of these, because some of them are the incorrect screws and I want them all the same so it looks correct. And this, I don't know, this was just because that tab, when I made this out of fiberglass, there was no way I could make that tab come up and across to run the screw through there. So this is how I held this one on, just with, you know, just kind of screwed through there. It did the job. It's been on there since, well, you know, 43, 44 years or so. This has held up pretty good, other than the lacquer paint is all checked out. Let me get it in some light and I'll get the other one off. I'll show you what this one looks like and we'll pull the other one. I'll try and show you. Hopefully it shows up. You can see now why I wanted to repaint these, and these I'm not going to be able to strip because they're made out of fiberglass and the stripper will soften the fiberglass, so that's why I'm just gonna put the new metal ones on. I might sand these ones out and repaint them in the future just to have them, because I made them all. My dad and I made these all those years ago and they've held up really good, surprisingly well. So anyway, let's compare it with the, well, this is the other side. This is the left one, but let's compare it with the right one here. Get it down here. It's still hanging up there. Whoops, I just got dirt all over it. No big deal. This is going to get all sanded out, but yeah, I think it'll look fine. I think this side only has these 3 screws holding. I can't feel anything over here in this corner, and that's kind of loose there, so we're going to loosen up these 3. Oh, I got to unplug the light wiring. Let me do that first. This one, the paint cracking doesn't look as bad and over here, but right here it's really bad. And I'm just hoping that everything's okay up above in there too. This should be it. Once I loosen this screw, it should drop down. Should. Doesn't always mean it will. Yeah, there is something holding over here. Oh, it's a screw up at the top. That's missing on the other one too. Right over here. So this is what's holding this back side up, was this ear that's up here. There's the other side. So there was a screw on this, actually still had the sheet metal in it. Maybe you can see the paint cracking. I'm thinking it shows up in the video. Yeah, it shows up. So that's, you know, that's all underneath right there. This is the side. But again, you didn't never really notice them. You can see some primer through the paint right there. But where the lacquer was thin, it looks pretty thick. That's, or pretty good. Where it's thick, I think, is where you get the most cracks with lacquer. Lacquer just isn't durable for long term for repaints. All right, I just wanted to show what the existing ones looked like under the light. Next thing I got to do is try and get these glass lenses off. So yeah, I don't know if these, just unscrew the bezel and see if they'll pop off. Might have to run them under hot water to soften the gasket. They've been on there a long time, so let me Let me see what happens here if I undo these. I need to get on a little better bench. Hang on. So far these things, I was surprised these weren't like really stuck on there. It came right off. And the bezel, which has its own special little screws. See, it has a little collar. I don't know if that, hopefully that showed up. But anyway, we get these off. No point, I'm not going to video turning screws. I'm going to get them off, get them on these, get them mounted to the car, and see how it looks. Now I got all four sitting here. These are the driver's side, left side. These are the right side of the car. And you can see these holes are offset just like those holes. These holes are offset the same as these holes and like those holes. So I'm going to make a pattern off that panel to punch that panel out. I'm not going to do it from these panels because they look like they're the same, but I'm just not going to take a chance in case this one's not the same. So that one and that one are going to be the same. And another thing I just complained about a moment ago, you know, this, see how this panel has that bend there? This panel has it. It's not as pronounced, but it's there. This panel does not have it, and I was complaining about it because it's a repop and not an NOS like that one. And you can kind of see the end there isn't as nice as the end there. And being repop, being NOS. And you can see on this one, that's basically straight across too, just like this one. So that must be the way that's supposed to be. The only thing I really see that's significantly different is the condition of the end of this is not the condition of the end of this. That one has a little bit like that one has at the end. But this end, there's a significant difference. That looks like what it should look like. Mounted these up. They're bolted on solid. They're not going anywhere. You can see the screws there, screw there. I had to drill a hole in the metal for that screw right there. But this is all on. It lines up on the quarter panel nicely here. The only thing is there's a gap there, but that's the way the original one was. And I'm going to see if I can tweak it a little bit to get it to come back a little bit more. I'm going to loosen it all up and work it. But that's the original one was like that, so there might not be anything I can do about it. I got that to where it's about like the door or the hood or the trunk gap. I'm happy with that gap. It actually looks pretty darn good, and this valance panel fits amazing. Basically what I had to do was bend the brackets that the panel bolts to up here down. They were just kind of smashed up a little bit, and I think that's why the backup lights didn't look even on the car. One looked like an 1/8 or 1/4 inch higher than the other one. You stood way back, and I think that is totally why. This down here is about the same as that one down there, and that one I'm going to try and make fit a little better here too. And but that looks really good. I'm really happy with that one. So that's just the way that one's going on. I just got to bore the holes for the backup lights. I'll mount them up and put the door up and kind of go back and have a look. But I'm going to go horse with the other side for a little while now. On this panel, this is too wide here. So I'm going to take my angle grinder there and grind this back a little bit. This is actually hitting the body of the car. And it's the bottom right in here that's hanging down, and it's because this is hitting the body. And I got to nip these off. I had to re-drill that, and I had to re-drill that, and I'm going to nip that off too, so that you know, it just took a little bit. You can see how much that needs to go back. Right here's a good indication. So I think once I get this back, it'll fit nicely. So let me get to it. I'll cut those ears off and give it a little grindy. This is the repop, the left one, and I got it fitting really good now. I got to touch up the paint right there. Got a little paint neck, but that gap's nice. Everything looks good on it. I'm going to put the garage door up and go stand outside and look at it and then determine what I need to do. Yeah, from standing out here, why not? They look pretty good, so I think I'm ready to put the backup light holes in. I'm happy with that. They look nice standing out the driveway. Made a template and made holes, and I'm just kind of putting them up together to make sure it's right. I took this template and I put it down to the screw holes. Move this out of the way. And I made a couple pencil lines where the center of the screw holes were and put that there, and then there's a hole up here and put that there and folded it over, and then have it trimmed off right even with the edge here. And that's 2 inches from there to there. Exactly. So I cut this paper 2 inches from there to there, and this is the side out I'm using. Now the screw holes on this panel are not the same as the other panel, but when I line this up with the edge of that and down to the bottom, that's where I get my lines and my holes. I'm going to double check it with the other valance, but you can see when they're sitting up together how different the screw holes are. And I didn't have to re-drill any of the screw holes, so that must just be the way they were manufactured on. And the cars, I mean, those screws lined up, everything lined up. And like I say, I had to grind some of this away to get that to fit up there. I had to shorten this and re-drill it, and I had to shorten this and re-drill it. This one wasn't drilled, so I drilled it. And this one I had to shorten and re-drill and bend it up a little more to pull it in. And I just barely took anything off this one here. I mean, just ever so slightly. And they both fit the car really well. I'm going to have to completely, yeah, it just wipes off, but I'm going to wax and grease remove it. And I had drawn on there and had it wrong, so I sanded it clean to get the pencil line off. And then anyway, yeah, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to put them up to the original panels, just kind of set them up here. Hang on, let me turn the camera off a second. There we go. And it's really odd too, because see how this one sits up on the bench and this one sits down a little bit? Exactly the same with the ones I took off the car. So they're not, I don't think there's any issue here. They fit the car. They look nice on the car. I stood back out in the driveway quite a ways. So I'm just going to take my little steel rule, if I can find it here, and I'm just going to double check everything, measurements, and then mark centers, and we'll punch those holes out. Everything measured out good. Put a couple pilot holes in. Now I'm going to get my hole saw out, and then we'll drill larger holes. So the panel will be ready to sand and prime again, and that one will be close to being ready to prime. I gotta just do a little more sanding, maybe some 400. I don't know, we'll get it ready here soon. Here's how the backup light fits this. You can see it's right there in that bend on the reproduction panel, and it looks like on these it was almost at the bend, not quite into it, but I don't want them both different. I want them both the same, so that's why I measured it out to match this one. So if I line the holes up, I can see the there. So yeah, it's a little bit over, but that'll be fine. And this one's exactly the same way, the way I drilled the holes. Let's see, there's the holes lined up. So I think this will be all good. Everything looks like it's the same. So I think it'll go together, look just fine. I'm going to wipe them both down with that. I'm going to give that one a metal etch prime and this one another coat of sandable primer after I wipe it down and sand it out with 400, and then I'll put a second coat of sandable on it. That is completely ready for its sandable primer. This I gotta grind some sharp edges off there, so I'm gonna prime that up with metal etch and then sandable. But I'm gonna do this right now so it can start drying. So let me get the sandable in the shaker and we'll get this primed up. That just makes those cans spray so much better when I give them a couple minutes in the paint shaker. Yeah, I was out priming in the dark. Let me see if I can get it around here. There we go. So I got a little run right there, but no big deal. We'll give this a 400 sand tomorrow, and hopefully the next day I'll be able to paint it. There we go, all the sharp edges. This was like a really sharp here where I ground it, and everything's nice and smooth. So I'm gonna give it a wipe down with the prep ball. I use my Dremel thing with a little bit like this to get the burrs off. And then I went over it with 80 grit sandpaper just to make sure there was nothing left. But I think that's ready to wipe down with the metal prep, and then we'll prime it up with the metal etching primer and then let that dry a couple hours, and I'll throw some sandable primer. Get the metal etching primer all rattled up here. There we go, all metal etch primed both sides. I 400 hand sanded both these out. They're ready to spray. I turned the heat up in the garage to painting temperature, and I got the paint in a shaker. I think we're going to give these things a paint. That is coat one. We'll give that 15-20 minutes dry time, and then we'll throw another coat on it, and probably the next coat will be the final coat. Yeah, sorry for the noise. I got my ventilator on right there to get the fumes out, but that's a final. Not putting any more paint on them. They came out really nice. That's the driver's side, obviously, the reproduction, and this is the NOS, the passenger side, the one that Dave gave me. And it came out really nice. Sprayed it with, use my HVLP door jam gun. I like this gun. I like my little Badger, but I like this one too. It works pretty good. Doesn't give you a lot of overspray, save a little bit of paint, and obviously that's what I used. Now I got a little extra paint here with hardener in it, and I'm going to take my touch-up brush and touch up those places I scratched paint a little bit on the quarter panels when I was fitting the valances there. If I painted this edge with the brush with the paint with the hardener, when you have the hardener, it flows out and it doesn't look like I brushed it. It actually looks sprayed, and the hardener will give it the same durability that the paint out here has. And I touched up a few spots under here from stone chips, and all this on both sides I'll paint with the Rust-Oleum, and I touched up the other side too there. So I'll show you what it all looks like once it's all together. I'll take a little video of this once it's painted too before I throw the valances back on. But anyway, I thought I would kind of end the video here so you can see what I'm doing. If you like the video, definitely hit the like button. If you want to subscribe to my channel, that 348 engine icon that pops up there will subscribe you. And again, thank you for watching my video.